Mr. Speaker, and we can make amendments at committee stage, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order members, I appreciate my screen is full. But there is also something called being repetitive. And that all of you will be on the same topic. And the topic is allow the House, allow the committee to finalize the report, bring the report so that it's not debated. I mean, members can debate with the benefit of the report. The second matter that has, from the ventilation on the floor, is about giving effect to the constitutional article. (99)(1)(b). So let me start with that one. That was raised by Senator Kaniri. If you look at the bill before you, Senator Kaniri, on page 22531, Section 8. Section 22 of the Elections Act 2011 is amended in subsection 1 by deleting paragraph B and substituting therefore the following new paragraph B, 8B, holds in the case of a member of parliament a degree from a university recognized in Kenya, or 2, in the case of a member of a county assembly, a degree from a university recognized in Kenya. So in terms of the qualifications in 1B, that is what that section is referring to. So it's very relevant to the title. To the matter before us, this is my determination. Standing Order 129, first reading. Every bill shall be read a first time without motion made or question put. That's what we did on the 28th of December, and we committed it to the joint committees. I directed that time, because ordinarily the committee has 30 days. I directed that time the committee to have finished its work on the 3rd of January and to submit the report on the 4th for us, because the session should have been yesterday, not today. At the presentation by the committee and in consultation with the political leadership, we agreed to give them one more day on the account that the first and the second were public holidays. And that argument made a lot of merit, and that argument was carried to today. The information, before I go there, second reading, in fact, most of our bills, we need to be honest to ourselves. Most of the bills that have come before us, we have proceeded second reading without the committee submitting the report. The reports become critical, and I've always directed that we cannot be able to move to the 3rd stage, to the 3rd reading, where now you may be considering amendments, where you'll be considering this. So that, because that is now everybody in totality informs the debate. When you do second reading, you are not going to make any amendments, and that's provided for in Standing Order 131. So once the bill was already committed to the House on first reading, each member of this House was seized of the bill. That was your opportunity to interrogate the bill, to look at the bill in preparation for second reading. The committee will, on our behalf, help public participation. They will also get some ideas, and then the totality of your own contributions, as well as the committee contributions, will now help inform whether you want to alter the content of the bill, and that can all be done in 3rd reading. So my directive is that I have sought from the committee, and that they will be ready, they should have been ready at 10 a.m. Then I want to give them another 1 hour so that they can finalize. So that before we finish this particular session, that report has been tabled before the floor. So that as we break for lunch, you'll at least get an opportunity to read the report, so that when you go for third reading, then you can be able to comment. Why do I say so? Part of the reason was, if you look at the way we gazetted today, and compare it with the way we gazetted last time, and you keep tying my hands. Last time I was liberal, but the representations were made to this house to tie my hands. So this time I became more specific in terms of those stages of reading the bill, so that the morning is second reading, the afternoon is third reading. To do otherwise, we are now going to the headways of the kind of issues we are trying to avoid. If it was the previously where I left it a bit open, I would even vary time. Now I cannot even vary time, because we must clear second session at 12:30 p.m. We must start the third session at 2:30 p.m. That one at least has a bit of time up to midnight, which is the end of the day, whichever one comes earlier if we finish. So this is really a straightforward matter, honorable members. We have done it before. I'm sure all of us have opinions. I appreciate that the committee, with the benefit of public participation, will be richer, but all is not lost. Before we conclude the business on the bill, that committee report will be available for our consideration. 2, you don't want to deny yourself the opportunity to make your own representations. So I direct that you proceed on second reading. Thank you. Proceed, Majority Leader. What is Senator Olendiama?
Mr. Speaker, arising from your ruling and looking at the clock, we have very limited time, and considering the interests that members have, will it really be adequate to have a debate and at the second reading between now and 12:30, Mr. Speaker?
Order, member. That's anticipating the capacity of the members to summarize issues. Proceed, Sir Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Election Laws Amendment Bill number 3 of 2015 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to take the shortest time possible in moving this bill. And I want to start by saying this bill is largely about elections, and elections are about democracy. Our country has done well, despite the challenges we have had since independence. We have tried as a nation to aspire to be a democratic state, and one of the tenets of that aspiration is the holding of periodic general elections and by-elections when vacancies arise. So, Mr. Speaker, we already have a comprehensive electoral law which was passed in 2011, and this amendment bill is aimed at strengthening what we already have ahead of the next election, which is just over 7 months away from now. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the importance of this bill cannot be overemphasized. The earlier we dispense with the proposed legislative issues, the better for the country, so that we can give clarity, stability, and certainty to our electoral process. Mr. Speaker, allow me to highlight a few clauses that are critical or that I consider critical in this bill. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, it is proposed that all political parties must hear and determine intra-party disputes concerning party primaries, and this must happen at least 60 days before the election. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, one of the most difficult challenges we have in our electoral practice is the issue of intra-party democracy. As much as I have said, our elections have largely been competitive, largely, democratic. We have a big challenge as a country with regard to intra-party competition or democracy. So this bill is clarifying that all disputes within parties must be heard, determined, and finalized in good time so as to allow the other preparations concerning elections, especially the issue of printing of ballots, Mr. Speaker, which must be certain. You must be certain who are the candidates. And for that to happen, issues arising from political party primaries must be resolved in good time so that all the candidates, their images, their parties, their symbols can be available for the Electoral Commission to be able to print and deliver in good time ballot papers. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill provides for a review of academic qualifications for people seeking elective leadership in our country. At the moment, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are minimum qualifications for all seats. There has been debate in our nation, Mr. Speaker, on whether we should review the requirements, the academic requirements for people running for the office of Member of Parliament, including the National Assembly and the Senate, as well as the county assemblies. Much of the debate, Mr. Speaker, has concentrated on those positions because already with regard to the office of President, Deputy President, Governor, and Deputy Governor, the qualifications which are there, namely at least a university degree, many people have felt that that is an adequate minimum requirement. This bill proposes to provide similar qualifications, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the position of Member of Parliament, the two houses of Parliament, as well as county assemblies, so that they could also be adequately, intellectually prepared to be able to discharge their legislative and oversight functions. It has been argued, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's an argument worth considering, that perhaps the representational role of members of Parliament may not require much academic education. But the roles of oversight, which includes scrutinizing budgets and being able really to hold state agencies at the two levels of government accountable for public funds, and being able to question government functionaries and engage them for purposes of oversight, as well as the legislative function of Parliament and county assemblies, requires some academic qualifications. However, Mr. Speaker, it is proposed in this bill so that you do not disenfranchise a large number of leaders in our country who have done so well, despite the fact that they do not have a university degree. In fact, some of the best debaters, some of the most brilliant and most productive members of Parliament in the past in our country have been people who necessarily did not have a degree. And there are good reasons why somebody may not have a degree. One reason could be maybe they didn't get an opportunity to get an education because of financial reasons or other reasons. In the past, we even have leaders who were thrown out of college simply because of bad politics, and therefore they could not be able to complete their studies. So there could be reasons why you could have good leaders who may not have the qualifications. And I want to be clear on this one. This is my personal belief, Mr. Speaker. What education does is just to improve the leadership in you. Leadership is all the other things that we do, other than the things we know. about the science and the other things that we learn in college. However, Mr. Speaker, times are changing. The dynamics of parliamentary democracy are changing all over the world, and we need to ask ourselves whether this is not the time to start looking at these things. To provide an opportunity, therefore, Mr. Speaker, for leaders who may not have the proposed qualifications to adjust, Mr. Speaker, and be able to acquire the necessary qualifications so that they are not locked out of future elections, it is proposed in this bill to suspend the operations of these requirements to the general election following the elections of 2017. In this case, Mr. Speaker, to suspend this requirement to August 2022. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, it is required, and Mr. Speaker, it is required, thirdly, there's a small amendment to allow not political parties, to allow referendum committees in the event of a referendum. And I'm happy to note that our country is also entrenching our democratic practices around referenda, because the way you listen to citizens is not just through periodic elections. In between, there could be issues that cannot wait for a general election. In between, there are issues which you want to isolate, issues of general public policy, foreign policy, internal policy, issues of governance, which you want the people to directly tell you as leaders what they want about those issues. So, Mr. Speaker, we have a good practice of referenda, and one of the things that has arisen, because we have had several referenda now, Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons that has risen continuously is that our referendum law is not actually there. Yeah? So we have bits and pieces, mentions in the Constitution, mentioned like what I'm about to say now in this amendment bill, and the need for a comprehensive referendum law, therefore, is something that is urgent so that we can also entrench our democratic practice around referendum. Referenda is a very good way of gauging the public mood. It's a very good way of governments assessing the feelings of the public outside the confines of a general election, which can be emotive and clouded. It is proposed, Mr. Speaker, that referendum committees may appoint agents at every polling station, at least one agent per polling station across the country, so that, again, to avoid a situation where the issue of agents during a referendum becomes like, like a matter which is not entrenched. Fourthly, Mr. Speaker, in the event of a vacancy in the office of governor, any person who wants to vie for such an office, in the case of a death or resignation of a governor or removal by other constitutional means, any independent candidate may submit their parties, symbols, etc., 7 days before nominations. In the current election law, there was no mention of independent candidates, and therefore this amendment is trying to take care of that. Mr. Speaker, number 5, a public officer who intends to participate in a by-election shall resign from public office within 7 days after declaration of a vacancy. Mr. Speaker, we have had a problem in this country before on the question of public officers and participation in elections. The law as it is now clearly provides that in the case of a general election, holders of public office are required to resign 6 months before the general election. But there is no similar provision for by-elections. So the net effect is that a by-election is declared somewhere, somebody is holding public office. Actually, technically, that person can campaign while in office until they are elected without resigning, because these are things that perhaps were not anticipated or were overlooked during the drafting of the Elections Act of 2011. Number 6, Mr. Speaker, This bill proposes that the IEBC shall provide for the inspection of the register 90 days to the general election. This is very important in this country where there have been disputes and disagreements on the content, nature, and accuracy of the register, the voters' register. It is important that the IEBC is commanded, as it is through this bill, to provide for the inspection of the register 90 days before the general election. And the inspection period is proposed to be at least 30 days, a minimum of 30 days, or any further period that the Commission may consider necessary. Mr. Speaker, two other last things, namely, one, the issue of campaign financing, which is also another addition to our democratic journey. We have enacted the campaign financing law, and now we're in the process of trying to make it operational. There has been some contentious issues of late concerning this matter, and therefore certain aspects of that law is proposed that they be suspended until after the next general election. But one particular issue which was in the public domain a few weeks ago, it is the matter of candidates or aspirants who want to run for office in the 2017 election being required by IEBC through regulations to open accounts, campaign finance accounts, to appoint campaign finance committees, and that was to be done by 7th of December last year. Mr. Speaker, this matter, I think some of the aspirants were able to comply, others have not been able to comply. There are others even who have gone to court for interpretation on this matter. Mr. Speaker, the regulations that gave rise to that requirement are not in operation. Draft regulations were submitted to the National Assembly, but the National Assembly has rejected those regulations, and I think the process of making fresh regulations is in force, is in course. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, except for what I have said, the issue of appointing campaign finance committees and opening campaign finance accounts, that issue, it is proposed, should be suspended, or rather should be, the time for doing that should be reduced from 8 months to 2 months, Mr. Speaker. That is the proposal here. Finally, Mr. Speaker, this bill proposes to amend Article or Clause Section 44 of the Elections Act of 2011. And I know, Mr. Speaker, this has been the most talked about proposal, and I'm sure wherever the committee of the Senate is, I am convinced beyond peradventure that they are doing a good job and they have listened to Kenyans. And I want to commend you once more, Mr. Speaker, and the entire House for taking the route we took collectively. It was in the interest of our country. The effect of cooling down tempers was dramatic. The faith in this House,
What is it, Senator Wetangula?
has increased.
Mr. Speaker, do you notice that the opposite side has literally turned the sitting into a baraza? There's so many caucuses and consultations, we can't even hear what the majority leader is saying about the bill.
Order, members. Order. Order, Senator Chariot. How can you not recognize and appreciate your leader when he's moving the motion? Proceed, Professor Kindiki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am tempted to thank the leader of minority.
Order, Professor. You should not be tempted. He even bail you from your own side.
I hear you, Mr. Speaker. The choice of word was deliberate. But, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the issue of amending or the proposed amendment to Section 44 has raised a lot of public interest, which I commend personally because I think that is healthy in a democracy. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I was saying that the route this House took is a route that has been applauded, encouraged, and praised by very many quarters, including quarters that have been skeptical in the past about the capacity of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the senators, irrespective of our party affiliations. The route we took, the decision we took, has helped the country to at least talk to itself and look for a solution. And I'm grateful, or rather I'm hopeful, Mr. Speaker, that today, one or the other, through our committees, we are able to resolve this matter amicably and for the interest of our nation. Mr. Speaker, I just want to end by saying that the proposal, Mr. Speaker, is to create...
What is the Senator Dr. Bon Kalwale is about to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, it is precisely because he's about to conclude that I decided to request you that I interrupt him. The leader of the majority, having persuaded you to allow second reading to go on before the committee report is tabled, has taken a lot of time, Mr. Speaker, speaking to the other amendments. But the country today is in tension, not about the education levels of MCAs and people. It is because of an attempt to amend Section 44.
Order, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order. That's a point of argument.
No, Mr. Speaker, I want to point to the discretion.
In fact, if you are opposed to that particular provision and the majority leader has failed to convince you, the better for you. Why would you want to aid him?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, you have guided me, but the point I wanted to make was not that I invite him to convince me, but I wanted to imagine what will happen in the afternoon. In the afternoon, we shall have the third reading, Mr. Speaker, and the paper will have been tabled.
Order, Senator Dr. Bon Kalwale. You
yes.
know, I am always reluctant to order you out of order for obvious reasons, because you are good at what you are doing. But on this one, you are anticipating a debate. This is just the first contribution to the debate. There will be more contributors. Why do you think that the other people will not contribute on the same issue, including yourself? Wait for your moment.
I wanted to request you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in view of the failure by the leader of government side to speak to the amendment that has brought tension in the country, because third reading, Mr. Speaker, it is not a time for debate. You allow us, when it will come to third reading, to debate this point, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Order, Senator Dr. Bon Kalwale, you are completely out of order. And you are an authority on our procedures. There is a difference between contributions to the motion, and there is a different, and it's very different from a point of order. So the point of order should be if the majority leader says something that is not accurate or not appropriate. But what you are raising is a major contribution. It is about can't see there properly. It's about 12 past 11. Our session ends at 12:30. I would like to encourage Senator Dr. Bon Kalwale. You still have more contributors to to contribute. If one member fails, who tells you maybe the seconder or any other person will not speak to the same point? Hold your horses. Proceed, complete the majority leader. We need to make progress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, the amendment on Section 44 of the Elections Act is aimed at providing clarity and certainty to the provision on electronic voter register. This provision proposes that the IEBC shall put in place a complementary mechanism for purposes of ensuring that in the event of the failure of the electronic gadgets, that backup, that alternative or complementary mechanism can be utilized. Mr. Speaker, sir, nowhere does this proposal mention the word manual, which I've heard a lot being used. The word used is complementary mechanism. The complementary mechanism can be just complementary. Mr. Speaker, sir, and still under Section 109 of the Elections Act, the IEBC is entitled to make regulations, and I'm sure should there be any ambiguities left out, that provision also is able to help. And this is very common in legislation, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to request senators to keep up, all of us, with the good work we started the last time we were here, and give this country a way forward in a respectful manner. And as we emphasized last time, whatever decision is made, let it be for the advancement of democracy in our country. And this is not about this way or that way. It's about democracy, and it's about persuasion, and it's about making decisions. The majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. Mr. Speaker, without much ado, I beg to move. I request Senator Kipchumba Murkomen to second this motion.
What is it, Senator Tangula?
Mr. Speaker, I take cognizance of the fact that my distinguished younger brother is running away from me today. Mr. Speaker, I'm standing on... could you sit down, please? Mr. Speaker, I'm standing on Standing Order 100 in relation to your ruling that we end this debate at 12:30. The Speaker, that standing order gives me and my counterpart an opportunity to address the House on a bill for at least not more than 60 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I want just to bring to your attention that the material I have, I intend to address the House on this matter for about 60 minutes. Now, if you say we are ending at 12:30, and I know there are many members who want to debate, and there are equally many members who are itching to vote. Mr. Speaker, it is important and imperative that those who are itching to vote can wait, and we debate this matter fully for the country to understand and appreciate what we are trying to visit to the country. And I intend to speak, Mr. Speaker, for 1 hour. So your direction that we end at 12:30 means that by 11:30, if I take the floor, nobody else will have an opportunity to speak, and that is not fair to the House either, Mr. Speaker. So we need a variation to that.
All Order, members. Order. Proceed, Senator Murkomen to second. But I want to agree entirely with the minority leader. Something should be done, including persuading you not to exhaust your 1 hour. Order, members. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to, first of all, appreciate the majority leader for eloquently, Mr. Speaker, moving this bill. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say a few things. One is, Mr. Speaker, last week I didn't have the opportunity to congratulate you and congratulate this House because we have demonstrated that we are a house of debate and that we are a sober house where, Mr. Speaker, consultations take place. We work towards bipartisan approaches. But, Mr. Speaker, we also respect the Constitution when it comes to the democracy that we have as a country. Mr. Speaker, I want also to thank you and to thank the committee, which I sit, Mr. Speaker, as a member of the Legal Affairs Committee, that, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity we had to listen to Kenyans, to listen to various Kenyans who appeared before us, who are not less than 59, Mr. Speaker, and to listen to the memoranda that came from them. It was a good opportunity for us to debunk some of the myths that, Mr. Speaker, have been debated out there that actually don't exist in the actual text of this bill. Mr. Speaker, we had presidential candidates before us. We had Senator James Orengo come before us. Mr. Speaker, we had ordinary Kenyans, people who are in civil society, people who are living their ordinary lives. Mr. Speaker, and we're very happy to say that we are making a decision today, having gone through the process of listening to Kenyans and having given them an opportunity for them to give their views on the bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is very important, and I want to just point to a few things. First of all, there is the Kenyans have this impression that there was a bill to amend only Section 44 of the Elections Act. I had an opportunity, of course, to serve in the committee that was a joint committee of National Assembly and the Senate, led by Senator Kiraitu and Senator James Orengo, and I have therefore institutional memory of where we came from and where we now are. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by the education qualification. People who came here were very emotive when they were presenting on the amendment on education qualification.
Order, Senator, this is where I need to make the intervention because the point was raised. I think that matter has already been canvassed. You can deal with the remaining matters.
Mr. Speaker,
so that there is a position in terms of moving the bill.
I know, Mr. Speaker, all the issues in the report have been canvassed. It's only that the various angles of the same issue need to be canvassed. Mr. Speaker, I really need to mention this about academic qualification. That, Mr. Speaker, my view has been this. I was in the task force that worked on the laws that are related to devolution. What drove us that time to say there must be some semblance of academic qualification for the MCAs was in the understanding that these were new systems of governance that was necessary that you have educated people to inform the debate in the Finance Committee, among others. But, Mr. Speaker, having reflected on this matter over time, and although this bill is postponing the qualification of a degree for another 5 years, Mr. Speaker, I have a different view. You know, when you go to an interview, you appear before the interviewing panel. Mr. Speaker, it's expected that those who interview you have similar or equal or even better qualification than yourselves. Mr. Speaker, all of us who are seeking elective offices are appearing before Kenyan citizens who 80% do not have, or 70-80% don't have any academic qualifications. And Mr. Speaker, when the public participants came here to make presentation, I agree with them that if the interviewer, the person who's sitting in the panel making an interview, determining who is qualified, Mr. Speaker, does not have a degree, does not have any certificate, who are we to come here and legislate that that person is not qualified to run for office? And therefore, I agree with the members of the public who come before us that in the fullness of time, we should scrap any academic qualification as a basis of entering into a public office. Let the citizens sit down and say, we want this year to vote someone who has a low degree. We want next year to vote someone who has no any degree. We want the other time to vote. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is them who have the decision, it is them who are the bosses, it's them who are making the decision, so that we stop this craziness and madness that public officers, leaders who have been elected are running around buying degrees, Mr. Speaker. Some of them are telling us they did an exam that, Mr. Speaker, at a day that you can be so sure he was having a nomination in his constituency or his county, but in the records it's indicated that he was sitting in an exam in University X. And I want to encourage the Minister of Education to take this issue of reform of university very seriously. Because, Mr. Speaker, I have seen some people graduate with PhD, Mr. Speaker, but cannot write a single sentence, Mr. Speaker, cannot complete a sentence. And they are called Dr. So-and-so, cannot pronounce basic words, Mr. Speaker, that are supposed to be applied, because we have made, Mr. Speaker, education as an issue that looks so colorful to have the papers. So everybody is running around. You know, you are told somebody got a degree from Kampala, but Mr. Speaker has never crossed, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Give Senator Professor Nyong'o the mic.
Mr. Speaker, do you hear the way Senator Murkomen was eloquently and fluently trying to tell us that there are people.
What's your point of order?
My point of order, can you name the people he purports to have seen with the degrees that were purchased? Because you cannot dilute this house to that extent, or Parliament or County Assembly in Kenya.
Gamaliel was told in the Bible, are you the only man who is a stranger in Jerusalem? So, Mr. Speaker, I don't think Professor is the only Kenyan who is stranger in Kenya. There are leaders who are in court. There are leaders who are in court, Mr. Speaker, being prosecuted for having fake degrees. There are leaders, Mr. Speaker, who are in court being investigated for whether they even stepped in a classroom. So, Mr. Speaker, it's up to each one of us to do the research and find out whether. What I'm just trying to say is that...
Order members, I agree completely with Senator Murkomen.
Yeah.
That's a biblical statement, if not a doctrine.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can only challenge him if he mentioned you in an adverse manner.
Yeah.
He did not mention names. Proceed.
So, Mr. Speaker, that is why I really needed to make that contribution, because we do not want leaders, persons who are in our office of power and influence, Mr. Speaker. We don't even know whether they had classmates in school. But, Mr. Speaker, we don't want them to go and influence the university by trying to make that university cut shortcuts, Mr. Speaker, and hence reduce the quality of education in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I totally agree with Kenyans who are saying in the long run, we need to do away with any academic qualification in public office. We are perhaps the only country in the world that requires academic qualification for any person to run for office.
What is this, Senator Dr. Boni Khalwale?
We should save time.
Mr. Speaker, the rules of debate are very clear, that members shall not be repetitive. Mr. Speaker, for half an hour, the leader of the majority harped on the issue of education. Now for 10 minutes, his deputy is doing precisely that. Mr. Speaker, is he in order to be repetitive, or is it a deliberate effort to play to the gallery so that the gallery thinks we came here to discuss qualifications of voters? We came here to discuss and sort out the mischief of Jubilee to want to bring manual voting instead of voting by technology. Mr. Speaker, is he in order?
Order members. Order members. Order members, relax.
Yeah.
Every member here, and this is why I allowed second reading.
Yeah.
Every member here will speak to a point or to various points. So if Senator Dr. Boni Khalwale is obsessed with a particular contribution, that is yours. If the majority side is obsessed with another one, that is theirs. So everybody has a right to decide what to contribute on. But I want to agree with Senator Dr. Boni Khalwale, and I want to repeat. The majority side and its deputy are running the danger of being repetitive. And in fact, I am concerned that the people who are praising illiteracy are the same people who have scaled the academic heights to the very top. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, it should go on record that myself and my boss, Senator Kindiki, both of us taught the University of Nairobi. But Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I want to come to the amendment of Section 44. Mr. Speaker, there have been too many myths, Mr. Speaker, about Section 44 of the Act. I request, Mr. Speaker, that my time be held if there will be too many point of orders.
What is this, Senator Kaniri?
Mr. Speaker, I rise understanding order number 30, paragraph 3A. Mr. Speaker, I rise understanding order 30, paragraph 3A. Mr. Speaker, given the interest that we have in this matter, and we want to debate it exhaustively, the time that we have, Mr. Speaker, as earlier noted by the Senate Minority Leader, may not be adequate. I want to move understanding order 30, paragraph 3A, that we do extend the sitting, this particular sitting, from 12:30 to 1:30. To 1:30, Mr. Speaker. Similarly,
Order, Senator Kaniri. It helps to consult the chair.
Consult the chair.
Because there are already parallel consultations. I'm not refusing, but it's not fair to ambush the chair, especially on such a day. Approach the chair and will agree how to proceed, including appreciating the technicalities. We don't have to deal with all those issues in the plenary.
Mr. Speaker, I want to come to the most debated amendment on Section 44, and I want to just say three things. Number one, Mr. Speaker, there has been misguided debate out there that there is an amendment written somewhere that in case electronic voting fails, we go to manual. That is a lie, Mr. Speaker. There is no such a provision on Section 44. Section 44A says, Mr. Speaker, in case the BVR systems of transmission and identification fail, IBC must put place a complementary mechanism for identification of the voters and transmission of results. Mr. Speaker, this is important. All the Kenyans who came before us, not a single Kenyan said that we do not have a backup system, Mr. Speaker. In fact, to the contrary, Mr. Speaker, what Kenyans...
What is it, Senator Tangula?
Hold my time.
Mr. Speaker, you may please sit down. We can't both be on our feet.
Order, members. Order, Senator Murkomen. The rules are very clear. Unfortunately, you have to assume your seat when another member has been given.
Mr. Speaker, when I raised earlier on in the morning that we needed the report to debate the matter, none other than the distinguished Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet virulently opposed the application, arguing that we are now in second reading and we are debating the bill before the House. But what he has been doing, Mr. Speaker, and I want to know if he's in order, is that he has been here taking advantage of his membership of the committee to tell the House who said what at the committee, and is debating a report that we haven't seen, Mr. Speaker. Is he in order?
Order, Senator Murkomen, did you quote from the report?
Not at all, Mr. Speaker. Not at all. In fact, to the contrary, Mr. Speaker, I did not mention anything about the report. I said the people who appeared before us. Mr. Speaker, it's my personal observation. It's my personal observation. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that is a contrary and a completely nebulous point of order.
Order, members. Order, Senator Murkomen. I'm afraid the majority leader may be having a point. A matter before the committee cannot be quoted outside the committee until that report is brought. So, and before you ran into trouble, you had already given us your credentials of what you and your boss have been taught at the university. I am sure you will not miss.
Mr. Speaker.
Other ways of dealing with the same issue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate your direction. So, Mr. Speaker, a complementary system and actually a backup system is necessary in every situation, Mr. Speaker. I mean, how can my time end?
Order, members, there are many points of order. Let me grant the Deputy Majority Leader 2 minutes.
Only 2?
2 minutes. So that you learn not to invite trouble.
That is, Mr. Speaker. Anyway, so Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
What is this, Senator Orengo?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very much concerned with your generosity, because people who speak at the beginning have 10 minutes. And if you begin becoming generous to the people who have 10 minutes, and then towards the end, a motion is moved that, we have 2 minutes or 1 minute. I think equality of arms is important. So those who have the advantage of 10 minutes, the chair should not be overly generous to those who are speaking.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, members. I am a bit surprised that Senator Orengo is worried about my generosity. I thought generosity was a good thing. But you are making the valid point. But if those 10 minutes were used continuously, then I would not be generous. But all of us are alive to the fact that there were many points of interruption on the member on the floor. So I was just giving him additional 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, in my conclusion,
the point is made so that the future contributors take that.
Will be shut up. So, Mr. Speaker, for the record, Mr. Speaker, there is the voting, and this is important for Kenyans to appreciate that we are voting manually, Mr. Speaker. That, Mr. Speaker, results are announced manually, Mr. Speaker. It's only the question of transmission of results that has been provided for by this bill. Mr. Speaker, as a committee, my recommendation, Mr. Speaker, as a senator of this House, is that the regulations that are going to issue in Article 109 will now be able to capture all the proceedings, Mr. Speaker, that we have discussed here as to when do you resort to the complementary system, Mr. Speaker, that you are going to apply. So, Mr. Speaker, having sat and listened to Kenyans, both on TV, in the committee, and in many other fora, I have realized, Mr. Speaker, that it was necessary for us to commit this issue to a committee of Parliament so that the myths are debunked, the lies are exposed, and the truth will only remain for us to make a decision today. And I stand in this House to celebrate democracy, knowing that, Mr. Speaker, at the end of this session, we will make a determination, a decision as a House, which both sides of the House, Mr. Speaker, sat together and went through the process, and, Mr. Speaker, ultimately using democratic processes. All of us who are elected here, Mr. Speaker, including yourself, Mr. Speaker, will go through a process of voting also in this House to make a determination as to the right position that we need to take as a nation when it comes to this system that we need as a backup. Mr. Speaker, I am very elated and I am very encouraged. This House has this great opportunity to once again, in a very sober, in a very, Mr. Speaker, intelligent manner, demonstrate to Kenyans that we can agree or disagree, but in the process we must uphold the principles of democracy, which says that the majority will have their say, but the majority will have their way and majority will have their say. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say I second this bill and I urge my colleagues to support the bill, Mr. Speaker, that is before this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second.
Order, senators. I therefore wish to propose a question, which is that the Election Laws Amendment number 3 bill, National Assembly Bills number 63 of 2015, be now read a second time. Senator Ongoro. Senator Ongoro, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today is a very important day in this country because the bill before us could very well be said to hold the future of this nation. All of us are mature Kenyans who have been here for as long as we have lived. All of us do not have options. We don't have Kenya number 1, Kenya number 2, or Kenya number 3, where any of us can take to. If we destroy Kenya number 1, then you can now go to Kenya number 2. All of us only have one country and one life, and that Kenya is one. Before us is a bill that holds literally the future of this nation. 3/4 of this country are saying no to the proposed amendments, and 1/4 of this country are insisting on a process. I want to laud this House, as I did before, for the sobriety with which we handled this matter before. And this matter was then given to a committee of this House to give the public the benefit of participation. And that has now happened. I'm a bit surprised, though, that even before we look at the proposals from the committee, that I have sat here and heard sentiments from members of the Senate stating that actually it does not matter what input the public has already given to the committee and that our positions are heard and confirmed. That is not true, at least not for me. And I believe I'm speaking for many Kenyans. I came here to know, to read, to have the benefit of knowing exactly what the other Kenyans who presented themselves before that Senate committee had to say, and it could very easily change my position. I do not have to have a very firm stand if I can be convinced that a process as important as the system that we want to have for voting and transmission of results, which was the bone of contention in 2007 when I was in this country, and that led to bloodshed, is still coming up. It's like a big giant that is still coming up to swallow our children, and we are actually faced on whether to kill this snake or to allow it to abide. I am here to be convinced, and I'm here to convince the other members on what I think is the right way forward. My only worry is that I am shocked, actually, because in 2013, my side of the coalition were insisting that we go manual. The other side insisted on electronic voting processes. They carried the day, and they had electronic voting system. We contested, and we still do, even the process and the results thereof. But now, because we say we have one country, we conceded and said, actually, they might have a point. Let us then, as a country, have an electronic voting system. I am not aware of any system that can be 50-50. It is either manual or electronic. There's no way, even in any system at all, that you can say, I am either sick or not sick. Either you have malaria or you don't have. You can never be given an underdose of anything. And therefore, I am so shocked that after convincing us, and after everything we went through, that we have now said, I think it makes sense for us as a nation to have a system that is devoid of any...
Mr. Speaker, looking at the time and the communication that you gave and also the Gazette notice for this sitting, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, that pursuant to Standing Order 100, subsection 1 and 2, and notwithstanding the provisions of the Standing Order 100, subsection 4, the Senate resolves that the speaking time during the debate on the second reading of the Election Laws Amendment number 3 bill be limited as follows. A, the Senate Minority Leader, not more than 20 minutes. B, the mover in replying, not more than 5 minutes. And Mr. Speaker, any other senator speaking, not more than 5 minutes. And that the Speaker to vary this further on need basis. And Mr. Speaker, this is because we have only about less than an hour. This is a very important matter, Mr. Speaker, and it would be important that many of the senators are able to have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to speak out their point. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move. And I ask Senator Zipporah Kitoni to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Realizing what the mover said, I think it's of great importance that I support that we continue with this motion. I support. I second.
What is it, Senator Tangula?
Mr. Speaker, we oppose this procedural motion by the distinguished Senator for Nandi. It is in perpetuation.
Order, Senator Tangula. Assume your seat.
Of a mischief.
I have not yet even proposed the motion.
Senator Sang, let me have a copy of the motion. Other members, I therefore wish to propose a question, which is that I beg to move that pursuant to Standing Order 101 and 2, and notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 100, paragraph 4, the Senate resolves that the speaking time during the debate on second reading of the Election Laws Amendment number 3 bill be limited as follows. A, the Senate Minority Leader not more than 20 minutes. B, the mover in replying not more than 5 minutes. And C, any other senator speaking not more than 5 minutes. And the Speaker to vary the time on need basis. Senator Tangula.
Mr. Speaker, we oppose this procedural motion, and we want to go on record very briefly that this is a fraudulent attempt to truncate debate. The country is watching this House very keenly, not on how you are going to vote, but what you are going to say in furtherance of helping the country remain at peace with itself. Those of us, Mr. Speaker, who have come here armed with a vote and nothing else are the enemies of this country. We want the country, Mr. Speaker, to hear, understand, and appreciate why there has been the necessity to bring such a divisive, contentious, and hypocritical amendment to the law that is likely to cascade the country back to 2007, 2008. We need to say this, Mr. Speaker, by debating this bill fully. And my distinguished young friend from Nandi cannot unilaterally seek to cut away 3/4 of my entitlement to debate this bill when I'm ready to debate this bill on behalf of the people who are not represented here and the people whom we sit with on this side who may not have a chance to speak, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we oppose this procedural motion. A mechanism must be found, Mr. Speaker, to expand the debating time, and if it is not possible, we are ready for you to gazette another sitting tomorrow for us to come and debate this matter fully and inform Kenyans on the mischief that this Jubilee government wants to visit on this country.
Senator Kilonzo Jr.
Mr. Speaker, in the last sitting, I requested for your direction on Standing Order number 29.5. And Mr. Speaker, your direction was that you called us because this matter is urgent and exception. That's why you recalled us from our holiday. Mr. Speaker, I want to report that the committees have not even had a wink. We have been working overnight. So therefore, Senator Sang, maybe because he wants to go and sleep, Mr. Speaker, to now limit debate to 5 minutes on matters that are such grave matters, Mr. Speaker. Even by the time I mention amendment to section 44A, Mr. Speaker, those are 2 minutes. Mr. Speaker, in this particular circumstance, I am afraid, Mr. Speaker, even if we have to sit overnight, sit tomorrow, the day after, Mr. Speaker, we have already sacrificed our holidays. We have come for a special sitting. If our colleagues want to go, Mr. Speaker, allow us to debate for as long as we can, Mr. Speaker. The country is watching. The country is watching, not for us to vote, Mr. Speaker, because out there, Mr. Speaker, there is a misconception, Mr. Speaker, that we're talking about different things. The debate here, Mr. Speaker, will correct those impressions. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, Senator Sang must wait for us to speak and listen carefully, Mr. Speaker, because today, Mr. Speaker, we are going to talk. And you shall listen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, members, order, members, order. Order, members. First, at least Senator Sang has excited the House. So let's have Senator Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank all the senators. But, Mr. Speaker, indeed, are we in order? Knowing very well we curtailed the participation of this bill. Now in the House, we are trying to show Kenyans how we want to talk and debate. Yet, the most important process that is in the Constitution, that public
order, all members will be heard, and Senator Omoro, you still have the floor.
We have just forgotten, we gave them a few days, but here we are now fighting for our own time. Are we fair to Kenyans in a new year?
I wish I had a second chance.
I will not go there. They will eat me.
Yes.
Bonnie, you should tell her.
I will. Senator Orengo? Okay.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to oppose this procedural motion. I think there's a tendency now to minimize debate in the National Assembly and in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, this tradition, if it continues, is a very, very bad tradition. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you are not heard, and particularly, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution says that there shall be freedom of speech in Parliament. I think that is Article number 18 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, if in those old days of one-party era, if people were debating the way we are debating, then they should have been never a Serone, because at the end of the day, he always had his time to speak. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg you that this is a matter we want to be heard. I heard Senator Murkomen addressing this August Assembly on Section 40, Clause 44, or Section 44. Mr. Speaker, that is a section, provisions that we want to be heard fully so that the country understands us. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we should not have any debate limited. Let us have our traditional 10 minutes and continue with the debate.
Order members, let me give the following directions. One, this matter is not strange to the House. This matter was actually alluded to by the minority leader and also by Senator Kaniri. I want to propose, the motion is before us. As we contribute to the motion, the leadership of the House can retreat behind here and give us directions. I will deal with the technicalities. That one you can't take away from me. But I'll give an opportunity for the political leadership to see if we can get a compromise on the way forward in terms of second reading.
Proceed, Senator Ongoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is sad that Senator Sang stopped the flow of my points to Kenyans. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, this is very, very important. And any Kenyan who speaks in this House, first of all, I started by lauding all of us. This is a house of debate. Unless somebody wants us to come here and behave otherwise, start fighting, doing all manner of things, or walking out. We have no such intention. We are coming here to talk, to let Kenyans know our minds, to speak to each other, not at each other, to have these records contained for eternity. So that whichever way this country goes, Kenyans know who said what and what you stood for when you were given an opportunity to lead this country, either to save it or to ban it. And so, as I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that we are all very shocked that after agreeing that now we go electronic, why the sudden change? And what really shocks me is that the most contentious aspect of the electronic system is the one that is being attacked, that of electronic results transmission. Actually, that was the bone of contention in both 2007 and 2013, that almost burnt this country, that actually almost sent this country packing and dividing this country into 47 states of Kenya instead of a united Kenya. And when we speak here, know that there's nobody with the authority to force anything on anybody. Know that Kenyans are living together peacefully as ordained by God and respecting their leaders, not being forced into a slavery, into an attitude of servitude. Know that you can say something here that can bind us together or split this nation. And that's why I'm very careful with my words. Mr. Speaker, I am really shocked when we still hear from the majority leader and his deputy that actually the system that we're talking about is not that we should also have manual, that you know they're only stating that there should be some complementary system put in place. Which is this ambiguous complementary system that should be put in place to help an electronic system? Why people go digital and electronic is to perfect a system. Now we are actually being told that it is even much worse than we thought. We thought that they were even saying that we need a manual system alongside. Now the majority leader himself in the Senate and his deputy have stated that they didn't mean that it is manual, that there's just some complementary system that is supposed to be available. This system has not been exposed to Kenyans. This system has not been interrogated. Nobody knows what this system is. Therefore, on the voting day, they could present anything else other than the electronic voter transmission of results and anything, because they will say, we told you Kenyans that we are putting in place some other system to complement the system that we have.
Mr. Speaker, we heard you clearly when you say the leadership of this House can retreat back at the back, behind your office at the back, to go and discuss. Now there is a major obstruction. We are not following debate because of the way they are queuing right in front of us here.
Order, Senator Professor. Order. Senator Professor, you must appreciate some of these things. I agree with you, they should be in a better place. But if they chose to do it in the most transparent manner, who are we to deny them? And I think there are more substantive issues. In fact, you are at the very other end of where they are seated. So you are not obstructed at all. Proceed, Senator Ongoro.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. My conclusion on this matter is this. There's somebody or a group of people hell-bent on taking this country back to where it is trying to come from. There's somebody who wants a repeat of 2007. Because you see, we might sit here and the 67 of us can either say we have the tyranny of numbers or whatever. What you are forgetting is that the real tyranny of numbers is out there. And you don't have an ability to control the decisions and whichever way Kenyans will think or act. You can only add fuel to a fire that is already burning, or you can decide to pour water on a small fire. What I want to conclude is this. The Jubilee administration is hell-bent on stealing elections. They are putting in place carefully a system to ensure stolen elections. And now that they know that we are now averse with the electronic voting system and maybe some loopholes have been sealed, they are now trying to reintroduce the manual aspect to this system or introduce another more ambiguous system, which is not even being discussed, to allow that process to take place.
What is said, Ongaro, but it must be a valid point of order.
It is, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order for Senator Ongoro to actually state on this floor and mislead Kenyans that Jubilee is hell-bent in stealing elections? Can she substantiate or withdraw? Mr. Speaker, is she in order?
That's a substantive one.
Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat, in case Senator Wangare did not hear me well, and I mean it, that the Jubilee administration is not only hell-bent on stealing elections, they are putting in place structures to steal elections and take this country to where it came from. And I am speaking here as a leader representing sentiments from Kenyans, that Kenyans are saying they decided to support the electronic system.
Your time is up. Order, Senator Ongoro.
Kwa nini watu?
No, mimi. I am losing.
Hiyo maneno ya Ongoro haisaidii sisi as a house.
Because if we decide to go into this in a divisive manner, then the sober leadership that the country is awaiting from us will be very sad. It is also sad because it is in this House that we had the two chairmen of the Select Committee. These are issues, and me being a member of that Select Committee should be asking myself what happened, because we were not supposed to come back to such a scenario. But when I look at the report of the Select Committee, the report is very clear, Mr. Speaker. The report indicates the way we are supposed to vote. It even takes into account Article 38 of the Constitution. It even brings out the rights, the human rights that we have, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, if indeed this Senate wants to guide our country, if indeed we want to say no to 207, then we have to be indeed open enough to discuss and bring out issues that will guide our country. If indeed we are saying complementary, it is for us to ask ourselves, do we want a laptop to be there, which is electronic, Mr. Speaker, that can guide us, or what? I think what Kenyans want to hear from us, Mr. Speaker, is us guiding the country that whatever happens, 207 can never happen again in our country. But if we take it in a...
Order. Order, Senator Omar. As far as if I am following the debate correctly, we are on the motion of time limits. That's what we are dealing with at the moment, not on the motion. And then the Speaker proposed it and it was seconded, and that's the debate we should be having now. And I hope it's going to be a very brief debate. That is the order. Order, senators. I was sitting where the ruling is that the motion was proposed and seconded, and then it was the Speaker proposed it, and then he ordered the leadership to go and negotiate at the back. But pending that, that is the motion on the table at the moment. It is not on the substantive debate. That's the correct position. So if you are going to debate now, you are not, just for the sake of good order, you are not debating on the substantive motion. You are not on the second reading. You are now on the motion by Senator Sang. I hope I'm correct. I hope I'm clear. So if you want to speak to that motion,
Intervention.
The trouble, of course, like Senator Kanini says, is that the screen was for the main motion, and it is actually full even on interventions, as it were. So maybe I would just have to recognize you if you want to speak to the motion on adjustment of time. I hope you allow me to have that discretion, because the screen is full and I can recognize each and every one of you. Senator Muthama, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, if I got it clearly from the Speaker who was on the chair, the substantive motion, Mr. Speaker, was to continue while the motion brought by Sang is being discussed by the political parties at the back.
That can never happen, Mr. Speaker, once a motion has been proposed and seconded.
Mr.
That
Speaker,
can never happen. The motion, if you can check the Hansard, you can prove me wrong, but the ruling of the Speaker was that the motion on adjustment of time will go on pending the discussion by the leadership of the House.
Mr. Speaker, the meeting...
There cannot be any other procedure. It will not be correct.
Yeah, I'm not challenging the chair, Mr. Speaker, but the meeting that was being held there was to discuss and sort out the issue, the motion that was raised by Senator Sang. So that stopped there. Now we are on the substantive motion, but
you cannot suspend a motion that has been proposed and seconded and proposed by the Speaker. Right? You cannot. At least it did not. So, we are clear? Senator Wamatangi. I know you don't want to interfere with the screen, so I'll recognize you if you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, Mr. Speaker, I hope I'm not one of the victims of that procedure, because I noted that my name has moved a few.
Order, Senator Wamatangi. You have no control of the screen.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm just bringing it to your attention because I also have a lot to say about the substantive motion. But, Mr. Speaker, on this motion is moved by Senator Sang. Mr. Speaker, we are a house of procedures, we are a house of order, we have standing orders, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, our standing orders provide very clearly. One, we need to remind ourselves that we already have a Gazette notice that has already stipulated 2 sessions with timings, Mr. Speaker. And the second session is gazetted to commence at 2:30. The only time that we can be able to move forward, the first session, is between the time it commenced at 10 and 2:30, and not beyond 2:30, because the other one is already gazetted, Mr. Speaker. Then, following, Mr. Speaker, what was moved by the minority leader, that indeed he takes 60 minutes, and each senator is entitled to 10 minutes. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the clock now, we have barely, between now and 2:30, 2.5 hours. If the minority leader was to take an hour, and every interested member here, Mr. Speaker, we have 67 senators. If you allocated them 10 minutes each, those are 670 minutes, Mr. Speaker. So it is not practical that we can be able to debate this according to what the procedures provide for. So there has to be a compromise, Mr. Speaker. And the only compromise can be on reduction of time, Mr. Speaker. And that one you have to acknowledge. It is only right, Mr. Speaker, because then what that means is that, Mr. Speaker, then we interfere with what is already gazetted, and it is not lawful, it is not legal, it is not procedural, Mr. Speaker. So the only way forward is for us to be truthful to our own standing orders, accept that motion. The only variation would be how many minutes do we allow for the leadership, for the other members to fit in to that time between now and 2:30, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Orengo.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on standing order number 99-1 on adjournment of debate. A senator who wishes to postpone to some future occasion the further discussion of a question which has been proposed from the chair may claim to move that the debate be now adjourned. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the debate on the dilatory motion moved by Senator Sang be adjourned until we receive a report from the leadership of the House. And that standing order is to allow somebody like I'm doing to move a dilatory motion, which means you suspend debate on a motion that has been moved, seconded, and proposed by the chair. And Mr. Speaker, the chair had already proposed. So I move that we adjourn debate on the Sang motion.
I second.
Who seconds you? Senator Machage. Senator Orengo. Order, senators, order. Order, senators. Order. What Senator Orengo you're doing at the 99 is correct. And that can be done. And it makes a lot of sense because we are not going to adjourn, to stop the debate, but to adjourn it so that we can get an outcome from the leadership. So I agree with Senator Orengo. The only problem, of course, is that Senator Orengo has already, under 99, he have already contributed to the dilatory motion. So somebody else will have to make that proposal. Yeah, to what you are doing. So any other senator wishes, the proposal is very, very, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What's your point of order, Senator Beatrice Alachi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I agree. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I agree with that stand on 4, what it means.
Exactly what I've said. Exactly what I've said. That now, what Senator Orengo cannot be the one, but somebody else can give that, can make the proposal for adjournment.
So can they move again?
Well, if there's nobody, then the debate continues. Senator Machage. Senator Clayton Murungo, is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order, Senator Machage. Senator Clayton, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, we do agree with your correct reading of the standing orders as far as Senator Orengo's motion was concerned. And indeed, I think it is incumbent upon you to make a ruling regarding the motion that Orengo was moving, Senator Orengo was moving. And indeed, you said, because Senator Orengo had already spoken on another motion, that motion of Senator Orengo cannot be proceeded with. But I think it is not correct for Mr. Speaker to invite somebody else to come and make a motion. Once you ruled that.
Order. Yes. Order. What I ruled was that Senator Orengo would not be the correct person to move that motion because he has already spoken on the dilatory motion. But that does not stop anybody else from moving that motion. I did not invite anybody to move that motion. But in the event that there is nobody moving that motion, the motion is finished for now until somebody moves it. That's the point I'm trying to make. So who is next on the... Senator Machage?
Mr. Speaker, sir, arise on Standing Order 99 on adjournment.
Order, Senator Leader Minority. You are standing right in my direct line with Senator Machage.
Adjournment of a debate on a motion proposed to the House by Senator Sang on limitation of time. Mr. Speaker, sir, you had hitherto ruled that the leadership of the House was to meet and make a decision on the same. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, move this motion that we adjourn debate on the same until the leadership of the House gives us their deliberation decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I'll put the question, which is that the debate on the extension of time on the reduction of time be adjourned until you get a report on the same from the leadership of the House. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of contrary opinion say no. There is have it. Have you agreed? Senator Elachi, you have the floor. On the substantive motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
have the report. The motion to start
Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that indeed some of us have carried a burden for the last 10 years. And we believe there is a purpose why today we must release these burdens. And the burden of us in 207, if anyone feels that indeed he celebrated in 207 after people dying that you were in leadership, then you should be asking yourself a question. Those are some of the questions we are also asking ourselves. And therefore, we have an opportunity for 2017 to try and change these things. It is an opportunity we have been given. And when I see many of us seated here, we are part of that process. So you have an opportunity to do what is right. There is no place in the world, even in my own body, when I'm sick, I have a complimentary to go to a doctor. So you cannot tell us that indeed in our country, in our Kenyan country, we cannot agree on any other way of saving our country but refusing to say we just want one process. I think the only thing Kenyans want to know, whether it is not a copy, whether it is not a paper, but there's something else that can help the process to end. It is an election for all of us. Let us not make it as if it's an election for a few. No. A county assembly member, in fact, is the person who can be most affected with the process that we are in to be. That even 20 votes can make that county assembly member not to become the elected person just because of a process that has not gone right. So let us not look at a process and say, this is wrong. Let us think how we guide Kenyans. Most of the leaders in this house were the leaders in 2007, were elected at that time. It is time for you to do what is right for your own country. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support their amendments.
Senator Elachi, you are through. Senator Peter Anyang'.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I look at the law as was done by the committee chaired by Senator Orengo and Senator Kiraitu, I don't see any contradiction at all that requires this amendment. In any case, Article 44(5) says very clearly, Mr. Speaker, that the Commission shall, for purposes of this section and in consultation with relevant agencies, institutions and stakeholders, including political parties, make regulations for the implementation of this section, and in particular regulations providing for, and look at C, mechanisms for the conduct of a system of audit, B, testing and certification of the system, and D, data storage information security. Mr. Speaker, if there is regulations done by the Commission in consultation with relevant agencies dealing with those three things, then you don't need an amendment, Mr. Speaker, which introduces discretion. And Mr. Speaker, in government, discretion is a very dangerous matter. What I mean, this particular amendment says the following: notwithstanding the provision of section 39 and section 44. In other words, ignore section 39 and 44 and produce a discretion which is contrary to what was written in law. And what is the discretion? The Commission shall put in place a complementary mechanism for identification of voters. And that word complementary, Mr. Speaker, in that word complementary lies a discretion, because we do not know what the complementary is. But in the Act 44 regarding the regulations, how to make those regulations and what those regulations should be made about is very clear in law. So, Mr. Speaker, unless you are introducing a mischief in law, this particular amendment is highly unnecessary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what it has done really in this republic is to introduce unnecessary certainty by people speculating whether that complementary system is manual or electronic. Precisely because there is now that uncertainty, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Omatangi?
Hey, Mike. Mr. Speaker is the senator for Kisumu, Senator Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, in order to mislead the country and mislead the House, that he does not understand what the word complementary means, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from basic English, as interpreted, Mr. Speaker, in the basic English dictionary, complementary means favorable, Mr. Speaker. And trying to introduce mischief around an English word that is expressly, Mr. Speaker, clear at basic level that it means a favorable alternative, Mr. Speaker, is he in order?
Mr. Speaker,
Senator Professor Nyong'o?
Mr. Speaker, I will ignore that unnecessary point of order and proceed to what I was saying, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senator James Orengo and myself went to the same high school. I think Senator Moses Kajwang also did go to the same high school. I don't see any other person in this House who went to that school, the Alliance High School.
Order, Senator Professor.
So, Mr. Speaker...
When you miss such basic things...
Oh, yes, the Speaker also went to the Alliance High School.
That's correct.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, why do I say so? Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a very simple point. The
What is it, Senator Dr. Bon Kalwale?
Mr. Speaker, with due respect to Professor, is in order to impute improper motives on others, that it's only those who went to Alliance High School that are up to it. When we know that some members here who are never in Alliance High School, at the same time with those who are here who are in Alliance High School, the ones who are not in Alliance High School did better than the ones who are in Alliance High School at that exam.
I wish Senator, the bullfighter was patient enough to wait for the point I was going to make, because he's presuming that I was going to speak about what he speaks about, but I was not going to do so. Mr. Speaker, if you remember well, in the play Othello was a Moor and a very good soldier, and he fell in love with a lovely girl called Desdemona, the daughter of an old man called Brabantio. Brabantio was very angry that this black man should fall in love with his daughter, so he marshaled some soldiers to go and attack Othello because he had fallen in love with his daughter. And Othello approached these soldiers and said the following, and this is very important, Mr. Speaker, regarding the point I'm going to make. Bravely, he told the soldiers who had drawn their swords to kill him, "Keep up your bright swords, for the dew will rust them." Then addressing Brabantio, he said, "Good signor, you shall more command with your ears than with your weapons." Put in modern English, it says the following: "Put away your swords, they'll get rusty in the dew. Sir, your age and status inspire more respect than your play weapons do." The point I'm making is the following, Mr. Speaker. It seems as if this particular amendment was made with a force of swords. In other words, there was a conclusion that in order to have free and fair elections, you must have something called a complementary. even before you make a good argument for it, notwithstanding the fact that there was already a law that was very clear. And Mr. Speaker, the feeling I get in this House is that there's intimidation. By drawing on the specter of 207.
Senator Professor Nyong'o, you'll have the balance of your time another time.
What's happening?
To be announced shortly. Order, members, just before we get to 12:30, I want to state as follows, that following the consultations which are directed to be undertaken by the political sides of the House on the matter of Senator Sang's motion for limitation of debate and on how to move forward, I am informed therefore that the following agreement has been reached. First, that the motion by Senator Sang shall be withdrawn by leave of the Senate pursuant to Standing Order 59. Secondly, that the Senate shall proceed with the debate on the second reading on the bill until 12:30 p.m. when this sitting ends, and that at 2:30 p.m. the debate on this bill at the second reading will resume until 6:30 p.m. when the House shall proceed to the Committee of the Whole by leave of the Senate again, and shall proceed with the bill until further disposal, definitely before midnight. I shall now invite Senator Sang to withdraw the bill, the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I stand guided, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that through the motion, the leadership of this House has been able to agree on this matter. It is important, Mr. Speaker, that the intention of my motion from the word go was to ensure that a majority of the senators who have interest to contribute to this matter are able to contribute. And Mr. Speaker, in the confines of the communication you had given, it was going to be impossible for more than 3 or so members of this House to contribute. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, now that with that agreement between the leadership of this House, I am excited, Mr. Speaker, to withdraw and looking forward to contribute to this particular matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Order, members. With the leave of the House will stand adjourned until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon.
Those were debates with regards to the amendments which have